So it appears that the Supreme Court, all 9 judges of the Supreme Court, have actually ruled in Donald Trump's favor. This is a big win for Donald Trump, regardless of what people try to tell you, especially in reference to ballot access. This is a huge win. And I'm going to show you something else in reference to the polls that might take you by surprise. Glenn Greenwald said it best. All 9 judges of the U.S. Supreme Court, including to ban Trump from the ballot on the ground that he is an insurrectionist, saying states can't decide this. Ladies and gentlemen, this includes the justices that were appointed unanimous decision. So that is what they are saying. They're saying the states cannot decide that. He goes on to say, recall how many experts on op-ed pages and cable shows told you Colorado acted correctly, only for the Supreme Court to unite unanimously to reject this deeply anti-democratic attempt by various liberal elites to ban their main political opponent from the ballot. Yeah. Let's get into it. We're going to get into this clip here from MSNBC. As you guys can imagine, they are not happy about this. Oh, what happened there? Oh, I forgot to press the wrong thing. They are not happy about this because they're like, no, we wanted to keep him off the ballot. I told you guys before, I don't agree with anyone being removed from the ballot. I don't feel like that represents democracy. I've continued to say, if you want to beat Donald Trump, beat him at the ballot box, but don't remove people from the ballot. And they can do this to anyone. They can do it to your fave too, right? Don't remove people off the ballot because you're afraid that they may be a threat to Joe Biden winning re-election. Let's get into this. They were not happy, honey.
The very same day that the disgraced ex-president was supposed to go on trial in a federal courthouse for his efforts to end democracy as we know it, that little January 6th insurrection, the highest court in the land today kept him on the ballot in a ruling that dodges the facts of January 6th and Trump's role in it. But instead, the Supreme Court handed Trump a second gift in as many weeks on a constitutional technicality. In an unsigned opinion, the justices say that states do not have the power to bar candidates from running for federal office. They say this, quote, because the Constitution makes Congress rather than the states responsible for enforcing Section 3 against federal office holders and candidates, we reverse. They're referring to the decision by the Colorado State Supreme Court. Now, that court found that Trump did engage in insurrection by trying to overturn the will of the voters by any means possible, including violence, and that Section 3 of the 14th Amendment does in fact apply to the presidency. Now, the Supreme Court's decision today does not touch on either the question of whether Trump is or is not an insurrectionist or whether the text of Section 3 applies to him. Instead, it says that only Congress has the power to do anything or to enforce the 14th Amendment. And as Colorado Secretary of State Jena Griswold points out in her reaction to today's ruling, quote, if we had a functioning Congress, we would not be in the situation we're in today.
Pause for a second. If we had a functioning Congress. So the Supreme Court is saying that that's actually Congress' job, right? Not like Colorado can't just do this on their own. So the majority of the representatives in the House right now are Republican. I don't know. I mean, if Democrats were really trying to get Trump with this, maybe they should have paid much more attention to those congressional seats instead of worrying so much about focusing on Joe Biden. They should have paid more attention to those congressional seats. And yes, it's true. There wasn't a red wave in the midterms, but they still lost the House. And a number of people continued to tell me this is not a big deal. It's not going to matter. And I said, okay, let's see how that goes. But the Republicans control the House right now.
With American democracy. In a separate opinion, the 3 liberal justices blasted the majority on the Supreme Court for closing the door on the possibility of federal courts disqualifying Trump or any other candidate who would engage in an insurrection. Writing this, quote, Section 3 serves an important, though rarely needed, role in our democracy. The American people have the power to vote for and elect candidates for national office, and that is a great and a glorious thing. The men who drafted and ratified the 14th Amendment, however, had witnessed an insurrection and rebellion to defend slavery. They wanted to ensure that those who had participated in the insurrection and in possible future insurrections could not return to prominent roles. Today, the majority goes beyond the necessities of this case to limit how Section 3 can bar an oath-breaking insurrectionist from becoming the president. Although we agree that Colorado cannot enforce Section 3, we protest the majority's effort to use this case to define the limits of federal enforcement of that provision. That's where we start today with some of our most favorite experts and friends.
Let me just say something for a quick second. One thing I wanted to add to this is that this is why I continue to say over and over again, and I didn't vote for Trump. I don't support Trump, right? But I said over and over again, until he's actually found guilty of this insurrection, who are you to even take him off the ballot in the first place? He was never found guilty. They just skipped over that entire part.
Former lead investigator for the January 6th Select Committee, Tim Heaphy's back with us. He testified in the Colorado case when it was in front of the state's court. Senior editor for Slate and host of the Amicus podcast, Dahlia Lithwick, is back with us. With me at the table, once again, former top official at the Department of Justice and MSNBC legal analyst Andrew Weissman's here. And Princeton University professor and distinguished political scholar Eddie Glaude is at the table. So nice to see you, my friends. Let me start with the what of it. Andrew Weissman, with you. What did the Supreme Court say and do today?
So they did a lot more than we thought they would do. Everyone after the oral argument thought that Trump would be allowed to be on the ballot in Colorado and, frankly, any of the other states.
And just explain why we knew that, why we thought that.
Because the argument, a lot of times people say you really can't tell from an argument. Here, there was just no friendly question, and you had no friendly question. You had a legitimate argument, and you had sort of the atmospherics of the court being, we don't want to be the ones deciding this.
What was interesting about this guy, if you guys take a look at him, right? He looks like he could be a character on a 1970s TV show because he has like the brown, like, is that velour? Is that velvet? I feel like I'm coming to America. Has been blue. So I don't like when people were talking about like Trump was banned in Illinois and banned in Colorado. I think Maine may have reversed their decision. I have to go back and check. But these aren't states he would have won anyway. Illinois is blue. Colorado is blue.
So it's a victory for the president because it keeps him on the ballot. But again, it just doesn't touch really the core issue here was whether or not what he did on and before January 6th was criminal. We found that it was. Special counsel has alleged that it is. And ideally, a jury will get to decide that question in some months.
So you guys heard that, right? We're going to go into the next clip, but notice what he said there. There is going to be a jury that is going to decide whether or not Donald Trump was guilty of that insurrection. Well, to go on, there's actually a retired federal judge who is very upset with the Supreme Court's ruling. And he's saying that it's overreach. This dude is retired. Somehow they pulled him out retired. Like, if I'm retired, I'm just trying to chill. Like, I'm not trying to come back and do any appearances or anything like that or weigh on any of these legal matters. But somehow they found him. Let's get into this segment with Jake Tapper.
The Supreme Court unanimously deciding today that Colorado must allow Donald Trump to be on the presidential ballot. But there was some disagreement on how far that ruling should stretch. 5 of the conservative justices wrote that no state can ever remove any federal officer from a ballot. The 3 liberal-leaning justices disagreeing wrote, quote, the majority announces that a disqualification for insurrection can occur only when Congress enacts a particular kind of legislation pursuant to Section 5 of the 14th Amendment. In doing so, the majority shuts the door on other potential means of federal enforcement. The majority attempts to insulate all alleged insurrectionists from future challenges to their holding federal office. That is very legalese, but it is a tough thing to accuse the majority of doing, insulating and protecting insurrectionists. Joining us now, retired conservative federal judge J. Michael Luttig. Judge Luttig, you predicted that the Supreme Court would affirm Colorado's decision to remove Trump from the ballot, calling Colorado's decision unassailable in every single respect under the Constitution, unquote. I guess the justices didn't see it your way. What's your reaction?
He looks tired too. Like the retired judge looks tired. He's like, why did you wake me from my slumber? Why am I here? I retired, damn it.
Today's ruling, Jake, was both astonishing and unprecedented, not for its decision of the exceedingly narrow question presented by the case, though that issue was important, but rather for its decision to reach and decide a myriad of the other constitutional issues surrounding disqualification under 14th Amendment. In reaching and deciding those questions unnecessarily, the court, the majority, as the concurrences said, effectively decided that the former president will never be disqualified from holding the presidency in 2024 or ever, for that matter. But even more importantly, as the concurrence said, effectively the court today decided that no person in the future will ever be disqualified under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, regardless whether he or she has engaged in an insurrection or rebellion against the Constitution of the United States.
Yeah.
That piece right there is very important, and that's damning right there. They said that in the future, no person will be barred because of this.
Pretty stunning.
The concurrences, it's stunning in its overreach. It's a textbook example, Jake, of the kind of activist judicial opinion from the 1960s and the Warren Court era that begat the conservative legal and judicial movement in the 1970s and 1980s. But of course, it's different here because this is unmistakably a conservative court, most of whose members were leaders of that conservative movement, at least in the 1980s forward.
Judge Luttig, what do you...
But the other thing is, too, we cannot forget the fact that even the liberal justices also voted along with the conservative justices. Now, if you want to make complaints about some of these decisions that these justices have made, I go back to what I've always said before, is that there should be term limits applied to the Supreme Court. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I don't know of any jobs that I've had or my friends have had that is a lifetime employment. In fact, a lot of these jobs will tell you this is a at-will employment state, or at-will employment at this company. We can fire you at any given time without reason. That's what it said when I worked at Boston University. Like, they don't have to give you a reason to let go of you. But the Supreme Court justices automatically get a lifetime appointment. And that gets to the point where even when they are sick and they know that they should step down and retire, just like Ruth Bader Ginsburg was, they choose not to. They choose to just stay there and hold that seat. So if you really are upset with some of the rulings that these justices have made, I think you should be pushing for term limits on the Supreme Court.
Say to a young person watching this who says the fix was in? These are conservatives protecting Donald Trump, and according to the three liberal justices, they acted in such a way today to protect all insurrectionists. When there was an impeachment against Donald Trump for the insurrection, a lot of Republicans said, no, 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 that's not for Congress, that's for the courts. The Colorado Supreme Court tried to act on that, and the U.S. Supreme Court said, no, 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 this is for Congress. I mean, there are a lot of Americans out there who are skeptical of the court. I don't know that this is going to help.
The best answer I would give to those young people, Jake, is this. The concurrence said what I just said that they said. And Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who did not join the other five in the overreaching decisions that it made, accused the three concurrences of stridency in their opinions. For your listeners and your viewers, there was not one word of stridency in the concurring opinion by Justices Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson. Yeah. Not one single word of stridency.
Well, it is what it is, though, and it looks like this is a win for Donald Trump, right? It just seems like they keep hitting Donald Trump with all of these different accusations or allegations, whether you support Trump or not. Like, obviously, you can see it is a witch hunt, but it seems like there has been some success in New York in reference to his business dealings with that case. The Fani Willis case involving Donald Trump in Georgia has turned into an absolute nightmare. The focus is now more about Fani Willis than it is on Donald Trump because of some of her discretions that she had and her involvement with the situation. But there's something else attached that I think you guys need to see. And I saw this today. Shout out to Professor Zinkas, who sent this to me. People need to get ready because there is a new poll. And I shared this earlier today. Breaking news, according to a new poll, Trump now has 23% support from Black voters. 23%. The number continues to increase. So we can see it here. Actually, I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see the picture better. If the 2024 presidential election were held today, who would you vote for if the candidates were Joe Biden? So for Joe Biden, you can see registered voters are giving him a 43%. If you go over to race and ethnicity, you will see 40% white, 66% Black. Now that's 66% Black. Joe Biden had 87% of the Black population. He's down to 66, 40% Hispanic, 43% other. But if you look at Donald Trump, this is wild. 48% of registered voters said they would choose Donald Trump. So that still puts Trump ahead of Joe Biden. And if you move over again to race and ethnicity, 53% of white voters support Donald Trump. 23% of Black voters now support Donald Trump, and 46% Hispanic voters support Donald Trump, 45% other. So Donald Trump actually, if you look at the Hispanic vote, Donald Trump actually has a larger support of the Hispanic base than Joe Biden does now. He has 46%. Joe Biden has 40%. And when it comes to the Black vote, yes, of course, Joe Biden still has more than Donald Trump. But Donald Trump did not have 23% of the Black vote in 2020 or 2016. He has continued to increase that. If the Democratic Party doesn't see this as an issue, they're either in denial or they're a little too optimistic about Joe Biden's capabilities and the Democratic Party's way of persuasion in reference to Donald Trump derangement syndrome. This is a problem. Another thing that's a little strange. Now, this was interesting as well. If we look at the age group, 18 to 29-year-olds, 53% for some reason still supporting Joe Biden. That's actually surprising. Part of that could be due to canceling some portion of student loan debt. 41% of that same group support Donald Trump. So that 18 to 19-year-old base is interesting. Now, keep in mind, this poll does not include RFK, Cornel West, Jill Stein. It doesn't include any of the, Claudia De La Cruz, none of the third party or independent candidates. I would imagine when you insert those other options in, those numbers will decrease for Donald Trump and for Joe Biden with that 18 to 29-year-old range. But the fact that Donald Trump now has 23% of the African-American vote, that should be a wake-up call to everyone. And I said in this tweet here, the number one issue for voters is the economy. So you know that Joe Biden really messed up. And I believe Roger had pointed out that youth vote to me, but I believe Cool Blue actually responded to this. I believe this was the one I saw from Cool Blue. Yes. Cool Blue said in 2020, Biden nationally carried voters, Black voters, with 87% versus 12% for Trump. A margin of Democrat plus 75 percentage points. That poll, the one I just showed you, Biden has 66% versus Trump 23%, is a national margin of D plus 43. that would be a 32-point drop off from 2020 to 2024 of party support with Black voters nationwide. I have been trying to sound the alarm about this. I've been trying to tell people that if you don't do the things that you promise with the economy, and don't come at me with this canceling the student loan debt. I got to do a whole tiff with people on Twitter about that today. Don't come to me with the canceling the portion of the student loan debt, because as I've said multiple times on this show, canceling student loan debt does not close the racial wealth gap. You still have a significant portion of the Black population that does not have student loan debt because they did not attend college altogether. So don't come with me. Don't do that. We're not doing that tonight. But, sorry, I'm still a little ticked off, if you can tell. But that is incredibly significant. I do not remember, since I've been old enough to vote, I don't remember a Republican candidate getting 23% support of African Americans in any poll, in any. So I don't remember George W. getting that. I don't remember Trump getting that in 2016, let alone 2020. People are pissed. People are broke. It's like a Color Purple moment. You show is po and you's tired. That's how people feel right now, honestly. But people really need to wake up. There were a number of things that Joe Biden promised, particularly to African Americans, that he did not fulfill. He didn't even fulfill the $15 minimum wage. You can't make these promises to people and then expect them to just show up for you just because. And people have been hurting the past couple of years since Joe Biden has been in office. It's a hot mess. Oh, here's Cool Blue now. Thank you for the super chat, Cool Blue. Also in that poll, Trump would win a Republican pickup of voters, 30 to 44, and Democrats would underperform in the group 18 to 29. In 2000, they were in 2000, they were D by plus 24. The poll is D plus 12. Thank you for that, Cool Blue. Tim, though, Sabs, looking cute today per usual. That color is so pretty on you. Oh, thank you. That's really sweet. I'm an independent now mainly because of you. Love the show. Tear down the duopoly. That's it. All right, Tim. Let's give it up for Tim, guys. Let's give it up for Tim in the chat. Leaving the duopoly. That's what I'm talking about, folks. Shout out to my comrade JB. I would like to see the liberals try to tell me, but the Supreme Court pick when I say I refuse to vote Democrat or Republican, justifying this ruling now. Well said, JB. Thank you, Larez. They picked the 14th Amendment, used insurrection part, ignored due process part. It was so obvious. Insanity. They tried to do this. They did. Like, how you just skip over, like, I don't know, finding someone guilty or innocent or not.